Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Dr. Minerva Romero Arenas, and I'm an endocrine and general surgeon at New York Presbyterian Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. I'm an assistant professor of surgery at Weill Cornell Medicine. I'm also one of the founding members of the Latino Surgical Society, and on behalf of the founders, I want to give you a warm welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. The Latino Surgical Society was established to cultivate, nurture, and support the advancement of Latino surgeons. We hope that you enjoy the webinar tonight as we consider it one of the activities that is in line with our mission. We want to thank our institutional members who have supported LSS, but more importantly, who have, with their commitment, demonstrated an ongoing commitment to the development of the faculty and trainees at their institutions. We also want to thank our Inside the Operating Room directors team, Drs. Ana Sofia Ore Carranza and Dr. Rick Bagoliza. Lastly, of course, we want to thank all of you, our members and friends of LSS, for supporting and believing in our organization. And so let's move forward together. Tonight, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our speaker, Dr. Daniel Albo. This is our 11th installment of Inside the Operating Room. Dr. Albo is a tenured professor and chair of surgery at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley School of Medicine. He also serves as the UTRGV Cancer Center Director. Dr. Albo, bienvenido.
Bueno, muchas gracias, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for this very kind invitation. This is a tremendous honor, actually, and it just blows my mind, actually, that anybody has any interest on hearing anything I have to say, to be honest with you, still to this day. But this is very special to me, actually. I've been looking forward to this day. I find what you all are doing with this society extremely purposeful, very mission-driven, very purposeful. And I'm looking forward to the next hour, sharing some life experiences and some anecdotes, and perhaps giving a couple pointers to people that can point you in the right direction on how to move forward with your careers and in this beautiful surgical life of ours.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you. I am going to read a little bit of the biography that was shared with us. So Dr. Albo earned his medical degree, magna cum laude, at the University of the Republic in Uruguay. He completed his general surgery residency and obtained a PhD in molecular pathobiology at Drexel University in Philadelphia. He completed a fellowship in surgical oncology at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center before joining the Medical College of Georgia. There, he helped develop a surgical oncology program and a multidisciplinary MD PhD program in oncology. He later spent time at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas, where he was the first chief of general surgery and director of the operating room at the Houston VA Medical Center. He also developed surgical oncology and minimally invasive surgical services there, as well as the colorectal cancer center. And again, both of those first-time occurrences in the VA system. He was later named vice chairman of the Department of Surgery and the director of the Surgical Network Development, helping to develop all of these services throughout the Baylor system. He also earned a certificate in medical healthcare management and obtained that from the Jones Graduate School of Business at Rice University. He has almost 2 decades in experience of helping design and implementation of matrix organizations in surgery and cancer in a variety of healthcare systems. He has held several leadership roles in a variety of surgical societies, including serving as president of the Association for Academic Surgery. He has been instrumental in helping develop several key initiatives for the AAS, including international academic career development courses that are hosted in multiple countries worldwide. He has tremendous clinical expertise on minimally invasive complex surgical oncology with an emphasis on colorectal and hepatobiliary surgery. He has received multiple awards, including the prestigious Michael E. DeBakey Distinguished Service Award Medal. He has also experience in research, translational and health services research, specifically relating to surgical oncology and minimally invasive surgery. His work has resulted in over 100 manuscripts, multiple book chapters, and several research grants and awards. In addition, he's co-editor of Operative Techniques in General Surgery and an editor of the Operative Techniques in Colorectal Surgery textbooks. Most importantly, Dr. Albo lists his family as his most significant accomplishment in life. His lovely wife since 1991, Luisa, is a very accomplished professional photographer and artist, and his two wonderful children, Doctors Camila, Albo, and Nicolas Matias, are the light of his eyes. So without further ado, I do want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today. And I'm going to take the opportunity to introduce our surprise moderator for this evening. We really wanted to take the opportunity and highlight this fabulous opportunity that we don't get to see very often. So I am going to welcome Dr. Camila Albo, who is going to join us for this installment as our surprise moderator. Dr. Camila Albo is currently an intern. She's she's an ophthalmology resident at the University of Texas Health Sciences Center in San Antonio. And she will be taking over Camila. Dr. Albo, thank you so much and welcome. I'm going to hand it over to you all.
Muchísimas gracias and surprise, Dad.
Well, this is a huge surprise, actually, of the great kind. Minerva, thank you. Thank you for the very kind introduction. I guess that means that I'm not spring chicken anymore. It was exhausting just to hear all that. But it just blows my mind, actually, that here we are so many years later, and it doesn't feel old. It just feels very fresh. And to have my daughter actually here, that's going to take me a minute, actually. So thank you.
Oh, I would also really like to start by saying thank you to Dr. Romero Arenas and the Latino Surgical Society for this really fun opportunity to be here and to help moderate this session and help interview my dad, Dr. Albo, Senior Dr. Albo. It really is an honor. Es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. So we have some exciting questions that we'd love to ask you, Dad. And then we would also love later on to open the floor to everyone here with us today in the audience. And we'd love to hear your questions. So I think later on, there will be an opportunity to add those questions to the chat. And it'll be a really fun and engaging conversation with us all today. All right, Dad. So let's get started. We would love just to start talking about your background. We talk so much about the importance of why and having a why and really having that crystallized in life. So I would love if you could share with us all your why in medicine and what drove you into surgical oncology.
Well, that's a great question, actually, to get started. Like every good story has a genesis, and it's always been about service. For me, it's always been about service. Living a life of service is purposeful, and always knew that this was going to be me, my life. I was born and raised in Uruguay, in Montevideo, Uruguay. Tried 3 times to come into this country. The third time, as they say, was the charm. First, when I was in college, the second one in the middle of medical school. And that one was hilarious, actually, because I didn't realize the medical school you had to pay for here in the United States. And so I walked into NYU, into what it was actually the library of the medical school. I thought the building was the library, the medical school. And a very nice lady pointed me to the registrar's office, and an even nicer lady looked at me with that look that says, "Oh," because I showed up in the middle of the year to register for medical school. And they proceeded to tell me that that was actually kind of laughable. I spent a long time working in New York, trying to gather the money, realized that was not going to be a good proposition. Went back, finished training in Uruguay. I started my surgical life there. And after meeting your mom, That was great adventure time. Hop on a plane, couple suitcases and a bunch of dreams. And here we are. So in the meanwhile, all that stuff that Minora was talking about kind of unraveled. And so it's a complicated journey, I guess, and it's not the most traditional one, but it was ours, and it kind of worked out.
I love that. I'm always inspired hearing about your upbringing and your journey. I think it's remarkable and shows so much resilience that I think inspires so many of us on this call and all of us starting earlier on in our journeys. So I'd love to hear a little bit more also about what drew you into medicine and also into surgical oncology for all of these aspiring surgeons on the call.
I always found cancer fascinating. Fascinating biologically, fascinating socially, fascinating surgically. It is the intersection of all the cutting edge stuff that happens, I think, in medicine, and particularly in surgery. The challenge is formidable, and the opportunity for doing good is enormous. Keeps you fresh, keeps you engaged, it's very purposeful, it keeps on advancing, so you never get stagnant. And I, again, it's one of these weird things. I was 4 or 5 years old, and a birthday, and one of the nice ladies in the birthday on a Super 8 V film camera at the time. This was way before modern technology. Asked me, young me, what I wanted to do for a living when I grew up, thinking that it was going to be soccer, something like that. And I told her that I wanted to cure cancer. And that was one of those moments where people like look at you like, and so I started getting used to people looking at me like there was something very strange in front of them. And I embraced that. And so cancer has always been the pathway. And surgery became my companion of sorts. And so the two of them together felt natural. Surgical oncology was. And I figured that why not shoot for the moon? I wanted to go to Anderson. When you grow up in Latin America, Anderson is, I mean, it's, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a lighthouse in a storm kind of thing, a pinnacle. And so there was a little problem. I was a foreign medical graduate, and I didn't even have a residency spot. And so research is how we started. Research opened a lot of doors for me, for us. It gave me a lot of enrichment. I didn't know what a PhD was at the time, to be honest with you, but I realized there were a lot of people with those 3 letters after the name at Anderson that were faculty. And I figured they would like that. And so once I finally got into residency, I told my chairman, Dr. Roslin, who eventually died from melanoma at a very young age, 48, truncated one of the most amazing careers and most promising careers in academic surgery. My mentor, my first original mentor. And I told him that I wanted to do a PhD, and he asked me why, and I told him because that's what the Anderson people liked. And he says, have you lost your mind? And I said, yeah, but a long time ago, and that's irreversible. And so he said, well, you can't. You at maximum, you can take 2 years of research. And I said, well, I already did 1.5 years. He said, well, it takes 4 to 5 years to do a PhD. And I said, to whom? And so watch me. And so I enrolled. And against his advice, I graduated from my PhD in 2 years. Funny because the graduate students were making merciless fun of this surgical type in their midst. They stopped making fun, of course, when I topped the class in graduating 3 years ahead of them. And so this is to say that the surgical spirit that lives in us makes things that look impossible possible. And so that was the beginning of it. And then Allegheny Health Research Foundation went bankrupt. Our world was turned inside out. I thought that was the end of my career, and reality was the beginning of it. I became the de facto program director in a program that was in severe distress, and it was about to be shut down by the ACGME. We turned it around, not only kept it open, but turned to Drexel eventually. And that actually, believe it or not, is what opened the doors at Anderson, because they found it strange that somebody would do that. I just couldn't let go. And so Anderson became the place where I ended up finding my surgical oncology roots. But it was not my home. you see, Anderson is already made. And I always had this idea that there was something else to be built, something different, decidedly more purposeful. And so we started. And so that was when I started taking all these career choices. I ended up getting that MBA, healthcare management, and people thought I lost my mind again and shut down my NIH research lab. And people thought I lost my mind. And as a matter of fact, I became a Lean Six Sigma operator. And the reason for all of this is because, well, I realized there were a lot of things broken with healthcare through our shared experiences with your brother. And so I figured that there had to be something better. This was the genesis, actually, of everything. It's when I started thinking about how other industries operate, how integrated operations and matrix organizations are run outside healthcare. And I realized how far apart we were in this particular industry of ours. And so I started getting a very strong interest, and eventually became my passion, my real life obsession, how to build these integrated health systems in cancer and surgery, how to collapse them into these protective cocoons where patients are self-contained and the process of care is delivered from A to C exactly in the right timing, at the right window, at a cost that doesn't break the proverbial farms. And so the healthcare organizational structure that I started building back in 2004, 2003, that became it for me. I have been very fortunate. I have been part of building 6 very distinctively different matrix organizations. And here we are building the latest one in South Texas. And this one has a very special twist to it. And we're going to talk a little bit about it later, I'm sure. But it's embedding the actual systems of surgical training and redesigning them into something very, very different, very purposeful, creating what we believe is a surgeon of the 21st century.
I find that amazing and so inspiring. I just love your outlook on life, how you see challenges as opportunities for growth and redirection. And that surgical spirit you talk about is so true. And I think it's shared by so many people on this call today. It's one fueled by passion and drive, and ultimately a life of service for our amazing patients. So with that, you talked about so many different pivotal moments in your career, and we've heard more from your bio and from what you've been sharing about your educational pathway. But I'd love it if you could share with us too about perhaps a tipping point in your career, a moment that propelled you forward in a direction that you may not have thought possible at the time or could have dreamed of at the time.
Well, that's a very interesting question. See, I have come to see career development not as a straight line or linear thing that happens. I come to see them as I had an opportunity to start really interfacing with very successful people in this world of surgery. And I started naturally, curiously analyzing the history of success on successful people. I realized that these people all share these common denominators. I come to call them common denominators of success. And one of them is their adaptability. As you see how successful careers develop, they develop like these hairpin loops that keep on moving in an upward overall trajectory, but every 5, 6, 7 years or so, it seems like they're moving backwards. They're changing, and they are changing at very pivotal points where something trigger a need, a yearning for a different direction. And it looks like they're moving backwards in these hairpin loops because what they're doing is something that I have come to think about, the shedding and retooling. Actually, the shedding story is a funny story that happened in Houston. Your mom was kind of worried that I didn't get enough sunlight and horsey kind of thing. So she put a chair in our back here in Houston and mandated that I went to spend some time outdoors. And there was a beautiful copperhead snake in the backyard, and that was furiously trying to shed. her whole skin, that is. And I got very curious about it because that's a lot of protein to waste, and nature doesn't do that. And so I did a little bit of research on these, and this was before Google and all that kind of good stuff. So it took me a minute to find the information, but they shed because the skin is an armor and it's an exoskeleton that is rigid. And to grow, they need to shed their old skin to build new one. This happens to make them extremely vulnerable. And unfortunately for this particular snake, this doesn't have a happy ending. A brown owl came down and killed her and ate her. So it was not exactly for young children's audience, but the idea of shedding to grow took hold of me. And the retooling is what you do to grow a new skin, if you want to think of it that way. All of these different degrees and madness that Minerva was talking about, were retooling exercises for a very specific purpose. And so there was an inflection point in every one of these cycles, these hairpin loops, life events, realizations that actually started pointing me in a slightly different direction. And it's the career within the career, as I call it, because what I come to realize is that the only constant in life, as you know, is change. And so change as a growth strategy, embracing it as a growth strategy is probably the most powerful common denominator of successful people that I have ever witnessed. And so it's become our norm. And so every one of those changes happen for a very specific reason. The one that is perhaps the most pivotal was the passing of your brother. Mm-hmm. As you know, that was a very traumatic experience for all of us. It was 5.5 years. It was not a sudden event. This was sort of like think of it as an event that dragged on over half a decade. And so I was telling some of the younger organizers of these webinar series that when that happened, I don't know how to describe it, but it was like somebody brought clarity to our lives. I saw for the first time ever, the actual, the world that I was living in. I was part of it, as a matter of fact, successfully so, at a fully funded lab, and I was in a traditional career in academics, the way my chair, late chair, Dr. Roslin envisioned for me. Except that that was not exactly right for me. Because there were a lot of holes in the healthcare systems. I became Nico's personal navigator. And so doing so for 5.5 years, Cami, I saw healthcare for how patients see it, how families see it, not how we see it. And it was not exactly flattering. It was actually devastating. And so I realized something different had to change, something different, a different healthcare delivery system. Now, you can't change the world, people say, but you can change the world around you. That you can. And so that's when we changed completely. That was back in 2005, to be more specific. And this obsession of building this matrix-style organization started. Now, there was a little problem. Nobody had any idea how to do it in the entire industry of healthcare. And I know because I looked real hard. So I started looking at other industries. I started looking at the automotive industries, the Toyota production system, the origins of lean. That was the central thesis of my MBA. I went to a Virginia Mason clinic in the Pacific Northwest to see how they adapted that system to their healthcare. And it was marvelous, the results. And there it was the entrance of the rabbit hole. The rest we learned as we went. We acquired tools as we went. We shed and retooled to be able to build them. The first one was in that VA hospital in Houston, of all places, the most unlikely. You see, when we started in the hospital, I started in the hospital because it had the very, very worst outcomes in the United States in surgery, as measured by NSQIP. They were literally they were number one in killing people. Well, it took us 5 years, but they became number one best in the country. And it was not just some single Lone Star Ranger effort there. This was the very first time I realized how much power there is in building actual purposeful teams. These marvelous teams that carry the days and the weeks and the years, these protective cocoons. A matrix organization, what it is, it's a horizontal integration of services and people. And so there is no vertical hierarchy on them. It is content driven, and it is designed for a very specific purpose to deliver the highest value possible in the ultimate package. And so we started developing these concepts that we call at the time value-based propositions. Now, somebody in the federal government actually got wind on that. In 2008, they developed the CMS Act for value-based care. And in 2019, MACRA came to be, change our world inside out. Finally, the alignment came on how we get compensated to how we deliver care based on value and not on quantity anymore. Mm-hmm. We started doing that in 2004. But we didn't do it, to be honest with you, to save money initially. We did it because I wanted better quality on the patients that we serve. And so that pivotal moment was in 2005. From there on, there was no coming back. You see, once you shut down an NIH lab, funded lab, you're going to have some explaining to do to people. You better work, or otherwise you usually became insane. But we didn't. All of these programs that were enumerated in that marvelous introduction happened on the backs of that concept. And it was built around people, lots of people, and I mean lots of people, surgeons, non-surgeons. I mean, I could literally name you the names of hundreds of people that have gone through these iterations with me. And their careers, a lot of them, well, you know their names, actually. They populate the world of who is who in American surgery now. And so, in other words, it worked. It worked for the patients that we serve. It works for the faculty that we develop, for the residents that we train, for the students that come through it. It's a bit different. It's not for everybody, perhaps, because it requires to embrace the ethos of we, the ethos of team.
I love that you shared all that too. We talk about how vulnerability is so powerful, and it's really a strength. And I think it's something all of us in medicine, we crave it. It's how we connect with one another as human beings, and really channeling our story and our why allows us to be our absolute best. So I love that you shared that. It was really cool to hear more of your perspective. And you talked about this power of team, which is so essential and critical in taking care of our patients. And you've had so many amazing people invest in you as you are doing with so many people. Can you tell us who have been some of your greatest mentors and sponsors in this pathway in surgery?
Well, mentors and sponsors, that's a wonderful set of words, actually. See, we're all products of our environment. None of us started in the vacuum of nothingness. Nobody is self-made. That myth is a myth. We're all the products of people that have invested in us heavily. There is three important concepts that I tell people now that I finally come to realize. There's a fundamental difference between mentors, coaches, and teachers. And in different aspects of your career development, you're going to need all three, and you're going to need multiple of them. There is no one magical mentor. The mythical concept of the one mentor, the so-called Godfather model of mentorship, it's not only antiquated, it never existed. There is no one person that can fulfill all the needs that a surgeon in the making has in order to evolve into what we need to evolve, because it takes decades to form us. I'm still evolving. I still have people that I consider mentors and coaches. And I have multiple different ones for different needs that I had. This is a model that is now called Mosaic model of mentorship. I wrote, one of the chapters that I wrote was on different models of mentoring. And one of the fundamental courses in the AAS, and I highly recommend that everybody in this particular group considers joining the Association for Academic Surgery and attends the career development courses that this marvelous organization offers to young people, in particular, young surgeons in the making. Mentoring is one of the modules in it. How do you choose a mentor? How do you engage your mentors? So I have many. I had Dr. Rosling early on in my career, as I mentioned. He was my chair the one that literally gave me the foot on the door of a surgical career in the United States. I have mentors, Dr. Tuschinski in my PhD mentor. I have a multitude of surgeons that I consider mentors, coaches, and teachers, and they fill these different roles for me. So you become sort of like a quilt, connections of all of them in you. And so I come to think about mentoring as a chain, connects us with the past and really thrusts us into the future. It's a link that we have, a human connection, and there is innumerable ones coming. But none of us was born, made, and ready. See, the human cub is the most amazing cub in the entire mammal kingdom. We have the most potential, but we don't even know how to cry properly when we're born. They need to actually slap us in the butt to actually cry. Otherwise, we suffocate. Think about that. A little shark comes out of a mama shark eating the way out, literally. They are already born, made, ready, exactly as they're going to be, but tiny. But they cannot evolve into something special. We can. All of these skills, everything is learned, and you're going to learn it from your own personal journeys, but mostly you're going to learn it from your teachers, and you're going to get coaching from people on how to manage your surgical life, and mentoring about how to manage your life in surgery from your mentors. And so you need to find them, though. How to find a mentor is an extremely important skill to develop if you want to have a successful career in surgery. And notice that I didn't say how the mentor finds you, it's how you find the mentor. You need to actually seek him out. You need to actually announce your intentions, target them. And when you find them, you attach yourself to them like a human version of a leech, so you can suck the living life out of them and transplant it into yourself. It's a very active process of engagement. It's not something that happens randomly. For me, it was never random. Dr. Rosling, I literally flew cross country to go meet him. He was interviewing in Philadelphia when I flew from New York to Los Angeles. Sat in his office for 6 hours, thinking that the secretary was just, telling me stories, and he was. And so I went back, and then a phone call came from him, and I thought that was a prank. Somebody was bullying on me. He said, "I heard that you were waiting in my office all day yesterday." So, yes, sir, I was. And so he says, "Well, I'm considering a job in Philadelphia. I cannot offer you a job in surgery, but there is a spot open in research. Would you like to consider that?" Well, you see, by then we have exactly $250 left in our bank account, and I was gladly to say yes. He asked me if I knew anything about growth factors, in particular TGF-beta, and I told him that that was quite literally my preferred topic in all of medicine, and I was quite the expert on it.
And were you?
Well, I hung up the phone. I went to the New York Library to see what a growth factor was. And I didn't get the beta part. There were three of them. There was TGF, alpha, beta, and beta 1 at the time. And so I had to pull information on all three because I couldn't remember which one it was. And I started reading mercilessly into that. Showed up to the research lab thinking that all these geniuses were going to run me over. And we're using computers. And I didn't know how to use a computer. I had never seen one or terminal. And so I had to learn that. And then I found teachers and coaches everywhere that I look around, secretaries, PhDs, postdocs, residents, and I learned something from each and every one of them. Well, as you know, we are a little bit of an overachiever bunch, and in a year and a half, I built a research lab and started an entire research production that ended up producing a combined MD PhD program. But I did that because Dr. George Tuschinski was a relentless advocate and sponsor, became a dear friend. You see, this relationship evolved. A lot of my mentors became my peers, and eventually my dear friends. And now they are part of my, what I consider a think tank. I still call them on them for different needs, for different, sometimes just to run on a crazy idea of mine, sometimes to get a piece of advice, sometimes just to shoot the breeze because you just need another crazy to hear you, kind of thing. We see each other in meetings, societies. It's this gift that keeps on giving and enriches you, but it's an active process and you need to go find them. I literally went find just about every person that I consider a formative mentor. If you're going to sit on your chair waiting for one of them to magically appear in your life, chances are much better than not that you want. And so find them, target them, you're going to find out that most of them are actually quite receptive to people that actually show an interest and they have a story to share with you. And when you do, it will enrich you. As you know from yourself now, you found some marvelous mentors in your own young surgical life. And it has helped you get to where you are now, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've had amazing people invest in us. And you're right. You've always encouraged me to just always ask. You never know until you get a no. So I think it's really inspiring for all of us and encouraging to seek out mentors and to help build a future that really.
Yeah, you see, a no is a yes that is waiting to happen. It's a yes in a cocoon.
Even better.
To come out. You have to learn how to manage rejection.
Right.
And I always thought of rejection as some kind of a sharpening tool that actually would make you more driven, more hungry, more determined. It's a no is a yes that is waiting to happen. Sometimes you just have to knock on multiple doors to get one to open, but the belief is what you have to have, that one will open and that you will be able to break through. And that is the one prerequisite that you have to have. You have to have belief in yourself and the people that will carry you through. You know how we always say, we always bet on the house.
Always bet on the house because the
all gets in. Always
never
bet on
loses.
The house never loses because you control the most important variable, which is your effort. That's the one thing that nobody can actually modulate other than you. And all that you have to do is put in, just the right amount of effort in the pursuit of something that you feel passionate about. And then something will happen because, something happens, always happens.
I love that. Love that. And it makes me think too, with so much of your drive, who were some of your greatest role models growing up in Uruguay? Who inspired you to dream big? Who did you look up to when you were first starting out, like so many of us in our journey?
Well, the first one, I didn't even know it at the time because I thought it was normal. It wasn't. It was your great-grandma, as a matter of fact. You see, my grandma was one of the very, very first female doctors, women doctors and surgeons in Latin America. She was actually the first GYN surgeon in Latin America and the fourth female doctor in the history of Uruguay. And so she was a pioneer, a strength that I took it for granted, to be honest with you, until I realized how rare that was. Back then, particularly in that part of the world, that was definitely not normal. Women vote and all that. And so she became a very powerful driver for me. Her husband, my grandfather, your great-grandfather, he was an immigrant from Spain, escaping famine after the First World War. Ended up in a boat at the age of 8 without knowing how to read or write. Died by the age of 48 of post-splenectomy sepsis. In that short interval in between, became one of the best surgeons that Latin America has ever seen. Take that.
Yeah.
And on it went. My dad was a surgeon too, a very accomplished one, flawed, but very accomplished one, and with a tremendous work ethic. I have teachers in Uruguay that always encourage me. Really, a couple of them. But to be honest with you, the most influential one was an intern, a resident at the time, a surgery resident. When I was a lowly medical student, and I was trailing them. We call them, they call us leucos, right? Like the leucoplast, the tape, the medical tape, because we stuck to them. we chased them around for 2 years, taking call with them. After finishing our studies and all that kind of stuff, weekends, holidays, you name it. And that man became, it's when I knew that this was going to be what I was going to be. He nearly died of Hodgkin's lymphoma. This was the time when the CHOG chemotherapy regimen came to be, which he thought it made him sterile. And then 5 years later, he had a baby. And so that young man became one of my most influential mentors. And I mentioned these because you find them in the most incredible places. He's not somebody that you would think of as a traditional academic guy, but he lit up the surgical flame very strongly. And so from there on, there were multiple ones. And finally, the last one was a CT surgeon that used to look at me every day and say, Daniel, when are you leaving? He would lean on his forward in his chair and say, when are you leaving? Every time I would go to assist as a surgical assistant, which I worked as for 4 years with him. And he says, one day you're going to make me happy. And I say, well, what is that, sir? Dr. Carreras. And he says, one day I'm going to come here. I'm going to be sitting in this waiting room, and you're not going to be here. And I know it's going to be because you left. You see, the socioeconomic realities of Latin America are tough. The top 40% of my medical school class all emigrated because there were quite literally no jobs. I was, I guess, fortunate to have 4 jobs. Literally, I worked 4 jobs at the time, and I couldn't make a living. And looking into the future, what I saw was devastating. And so the drivers were powerful to look for a new life in the ultimate, most competitive of places, right here in this country. They drove me here, all of them, dozens of them.
I love it. If you could go back and give yourself also, your younger self, some advice, what would that be when you reflect on that part of your life?
Other than don't be a bonehead and be a better listener, or to listen to your mother particularly, and instead of arguing on stupid stuff, I would just tell myself to do exactly what I was about to do, to not waver, because, well, he produced all of these. And so it was just the right path. I just had no idea that it was going to be. But I would tell myself not to be a bonehead and be a better listener early on. I think I could have probably developed a little bit faster, and it would have saved me a lot of unnecessary aggravation. But then again, perhaps that is what was necessary for to finally learn how to actually listen to people that are trying to tell you important things in and out of medicine.
That's great advice. Always looking forwards, never back, right? The best is always yet to come.
You know us, it's always forward. There's not going backwards. Dwelling in the past is not only a useless exercise, it's actually a very damaging exercise. You see, you can't change the past. However hard you try, you can't. You can reflect on your roots. You can reflect on things to understand who you are and where you're going. And that is healthy, I think, to remember, as they call it, as a driver. But trying to change the past is literally physically impossible. And so you cannot build a time machine to the past, but you can build a time machine to the future. In that future, you're going to write it, not somebody else. You're the protagonist on the story, right? And so focusing what's in front has always been a central tenet for all of us in our family, as you know. And it still is. The best is always yet to come. Always. Has to be. Because we're not done. And so if we're not done, it's going to be better tomorrow. So I always tell the story of one of the most wonderful stories, rarely told in this country in particular, of what they're called Imagineers. I don't know if you all ever heard about the Imagineers. So Imagineers were a bunch of engineers that were recruited and hired by Walt Disney with the task to imagine a new world. You see, people think that Walt Disney invented Disney World. He didn't. His Imagineers did. And so these people got together and they had this central task of imagining a whole world of wholesome that didn't exist at the time. And so the first thing that they needed was a mascot, sort of like a rallying point, if you wish. And for context, at the time of the top 5 things that kill people in the planet, 3 of them were carried by rats as a vector. So they came up with Mickey Mouse. Think about that for a second. These animals. But then from there, they started building this future world, block by block. They literally engineered it from nothing into existence. And so they thought, everybody thought that these people were visionaries. But in reality, all that they did was build their own futures. And so it has come to me that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And so you just invent your own future, you build it. And then people think that you're some kind of a visionary, that you saw this or that, or people ask me to this day, how did you know that value-based care was going to happen? I said, I didn't. I just saw the world as the rightful world, the righteous world to build. And all that we had to do at that point was to build the goddamn thing. And so building is easy, you see. So I built in a house. We're building a house now here in beautiful South Texas. You would lay the foundation, and you put the bricks and pipes and all that kind of stuff, and then you build a house. Well, I didn't know the house was going to be there. We just built it. And so these programs, these marvelous things that happen here, they're built purposefully for a very specific reason, for a very specific mission by people. And so when they're finished and people see the end product, they think that it was a visionary exercise. It wasn't. You were just building something. And so the Imagineers are inspirational to me. I say it's one of the coolest stories that I wish somebody would ever make a movie about or something, write a book, because Walt Disney wrote on the coattails of them. He was the visible face of the spear. But unfortunately, people forgot about the other ones, and now they think that it was a single man that built that incredible empire. It wasn't. It was an incredible team of people that did so.
What a beautiful reminder of the importance of team, too. It makes me think, too, for people who are dreaming of building their future in surgery, you know, everyone on this call, people tuning in, what advice do you have for applicants who are applying into surgery? What advice do you have for people who are really dreaming of going into surgical oncology? What advice do you have for them as they try to apply? What do you look for in those applicants?
What do I look for? That's a very good question. We're about to embrace again the interview session. We were very blessed that we started the second residency program here. We opened it up actually this last year. And I was telling the applicants exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for young men and women that had the capacity to dream. I want dreamers. I want people that have a dream for a future. I want people that have a passion. I want grit. Grit is the most powerful trait that I look in people, as described by Angela Duckworth in her marvelous book, Aptly Called Grit. You see, grit is the intersection between passion and perseverance. That right there is the in a capsule, the story of success. If you look at successful people, they're all gritty. They're not rocket scientists. They're not extraordinarily intelligent. I mean, they're reasonably smart, but they're very gritty. They have passion, and they have the capacity to persevere and to endure for long periods of time in the pursuit of their dreams. So that's what I look for. When I find that, I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to nurture you with everything I have. Because you see, if you imagine the journey as a destination that you're driving to, and you're driving into a bus, all that you have to do is to put the right people in the bus, in the right seats on the bus, and let it drive the goddamn. And then the bus is going to get to destination. This is what I look for. This is what people that look like me or think like me look for. I'm not looking for geniuses. I'm looking for gritty dreamers. If you have that, if you have the passion and that perseverance in you, we're going to do everything we can to attract you, to recruit you, to retain you, to develop it. One of the things that I'm the most intensely proud is for all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that I have recruited. Nobody has ever left us unless it's been because of family reasons or a promotion that I couldn't touch. And we celebrate those cases. Those are stories of success. How do we do it? Well, we do it by building a world around them that makes them happy. What makes you happy? Do the things that you're dreaming. Find the dream and build your world around it. The rest will take care of itself. It's just a matter of resource management at that point. That's the easy part. Complicated, but easy. Dreaming, that's the prerequisite.
Never stop dreaming. I love it. Tell us some more about some of the exciting things going on in beautiful Rio Grande Valley. We got it earlier. I know you're so excited and love talking about it.
Best kept secret in the country. One of them career moves that people were like, you did what? He's where? Are you crazy? What the hell are you doing down there? Well, I'll tell you what we're doing out here. We are disrupting big time down here. Disrupting everything. We're building a new hospital, the very first Lean Six Sigma building in healthcare anywhere in the United States. From the first brick that touches the ground, that marble that opens in 2.5 years, is going to be a fusion of lean design and lean processes. We are disrupting the environment of surgical education. Somebody made the mistake of letting me build it. And so we built a second residency training program here. And what are we doing that is different? Well, a little bit. We inverted the pyramid. We are attacking just about every Halsteadian concepts of surgical training down here. What do I mean by inverting a pyramid? I just did a Whipple with an intern today. That was his 120th major surgery in 2.5 months.
Oh, wow.
We have full immersion simulation labs here, and they have to spend at least 40% of their time in these simulated environments. We have meld an apprenticeship model into very, very high-end curriculum development. We're teaching them not only fundamentals of lean, but they're going to graduate as, black belts in Lean Six Sigma, QITI training. The surgeon of the 21st century, team building strategies. In other words, I'm trying to figure a package where we can get these random 30, 40 years career of mine, condense into a deliverable package and inject it into young men and women in a 5-year window. What would happen if I know what I know now 35 years ago? What would be the end result of that? Well, that experiment is happening in South Texas, and it's what we're doing here. And so building that into a matrix-style organization, it finally occurred to me that the most difficult aspect of building matrix organizations is to find the right people for them. So what do you do when you want to find good people? You train them. So this version of it has the very training modules embedded into it. So if we're right, in about 5 to 6 years' time, we're going to see the first layer evolution of that. And 5 years later, it's going to be in full blossom effect. We have a 3.5 million culture here, people with incredible healthcare needs, 85% Latino, board medicine concepts, one of the most vibrant, vibrant parts of the United States, one of the fastest growing parts of the United States, fully supported by the weight of the University of Texas system. And unlike in other stops before, I have no stops here. There is no place. There is just an open canvas and go imagine the world kind of concept. We are the Imagineers, and I'm hiring a whole host of them. This year alone, I have 10 new surgeons. I have 5 more that are coming, and that's just the beginning. We doubled the surgical platform. We're building a cancer center. We're building a new hospital. Lean processes meeting lean design. That story has never been written. And if we're right, and maybe this will be a colossal flame out, but if we're right, well, this is disruptive. it allows you to actually see what happens when you have really cool people dreaming together purposefully for a very specific mission. Each and every one of the people that we're hiring are exactly that. They're very greedy and they're dreaming a new future. Lots and lots of stuff happening here. So this is very much a shameful self-promotion applied to our program if you want to be cool kind of thing. But that is what you can expect from us down here.
That's remarkable. What an exciting future.
See, that resident, by the way, his name is Francisco Obregón. He came from Venezuela. He's doing a Whipple today. And we were talking as we're doing this thing. So we have a very lean Six Sigma way of doing Whipples. We do Whipples now, as you know, skin to skin in 3 hours. Deliver consistently metronomic results. I mean, value-based packages on steroids. And so the first one was done by noon. And so he was asking me, how is it possible? He said, well, look around you. Look at this cocoon of people that you are immersed into right now and look exactly what they're doing. That anesthesiology, the circulating nurse, the scrub nurse, the assistants, the CFAs. And I said, now look outside the OR. Look at the supply chain. Look at the OR management. Look at the entire C-suite that supports this. Look at the clinics where this starts. Understand the ERAS pathways, the enhanced recovery after surgery pathways, and the literal hundreds of people that are necessary to pull all of these off. So this one patient gets this operation done at the best possible way. Can you see that? Because once you see the totality of it, you understand the ecosystem that you're a part of. And it helps understand what is it that you're trying to develop. And so he saw it. He saw it today for the first time. This was a fully trained surgeon in Venezuela before he came here. And I think it kind of blew his mind. And I know so because the first time I saw it, when we first did it this way, it blew mine. I just couldn't believe it, that actually worked. Now is the expectation that it works. We are surprised when it doesn't. As a matter of fact, we're not surprised. We actually analyzed the crap out of it, why it didn't. You see, these are the errors, as they're called, preventing them from turning into a defect. It's a very powerful concept of lean. And so errors become these gold nuggets of learning where an entire team can congregate and learn from them. And so we have all kinds of environments to do that, from traditional M&Ms to QATIs and peer review processes, and you name it, there is an entire constellation. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds on how you build these organizational things. But the errors are gold nuggets to be celebrated, is the concept. Because we learn something that makes us stronger, better, more purposeful, building mini time machines into the future.
That alone is another conversation too, for maybe another time. Those are amazing, amazing topics too. I have some more questions, but I would really love to turn it over to the audience too and hear from you all what questions you have. So we would love to take this time right now to hear from all of you. And either in the chat or on audio too works as well.
Your mom tells me to hydrate all the time. And she's always right.
She is. We always listen to mom. Well, I do have one question too while we're waiting for answers too. Can you say about your life or what that looks like?
Yeah, the mythical work-life balance, I suppose, is the question. I'll tell you how I come to see the work-life balance. Love what you do when you work, and love what you do when you don't. It's really as simple as that. It's not the amount of time that you spend doing something, it's the emotional imprint that it leaves behind. So the work-life balance starts in the workspace, as a matter of fact. If you're unhappy in your workspace, you're not going to find the balance that you're looking for. As a matter of fact, people, I think about it upside down. first you need to find out how to find a work environment where you actually fulfill and you feel satisfied. That is the first step. Then you need to get lucky, and you need to get lucky to find people around you, family, friends, that actually enrich you. Be interesting people, you know, our friends, and they're all very interesting people, and so I can get enough of them, and spend time with your family, and I mean real time, not pretend time. Be a participant in your children's lives, and be present. The amount of time that you have, use it purposefully. As you know, I don't have a lot of vices or esoteric hobbies, and my hobby is my work and my family, my friends. And so I think the work-life balance is quite simply that: finding something that you love, do it with love in your heart, and then when you disengage from your work, love the people that you're with. Now, the key is how to disengage from your work, and this is something that perhaps merits a little bit of commenting on that, because you see, if you're going to be an N of one in a traditional surgical model, it is very difficult to disconnect from work. You need to have your tribe. You need to have a multitude of people that you can lean on, cross-coverage models for call and for clinics and in your inside of the ORs, APPs, advanced practice practitioners types, MAs, PAs, and NPs, people that can actually create this protective network around you that allows you to utilize your time outside the workspace to be outside the workspace. And so you're not a slave of your work environment constantly. In other words, you need a team of people around you. And people say, well, how do you do that? It costs a lot of money. Well, actually, it doesn't. It actually makes a lot of money when you do it right. It doesn't cost them. It makes it because it becomes this incredible power amplifier of you that allows you to do all of this stuff, all of these cases and all of these academic activities, and all of these teaching and all that kind of stuff. It actually allows you to disengage outside the workspace. So you have to build your tribe. You have to build your teams. They are going to determine your quality of life.
We have a question, I think, from Alejandra Silva Hernandez. If you'd love to ask.
This is so beautiful. It's the first time I'm hearing my name pronounced right. I'm currently applying to medical school, and I'm a first-generation immigrant, first-generation student, and Latina. And so I feel like I just have to be like my own cheerleader. But anytime I try to share my, goals of becoming a surgeon one day, people kind of just take that as arrogance. So I'm wondering, how do you differentiate when, you're just trying to find your confidence and trying to advocate for yourself from true arrogance, and how do you move forward? How do you find mentors when you kind of have had to do that self-advocacy for so long?
That's a great question, Alejandra. Surgeons will live actually on the razor sharp edge of a knife. The difference between confidence and arrogance can be millimeters from each other. Confidence is a prerequisite to be who we are. And to be honest with you, a little bit of arrogance does have to go with that, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do what we do. I mean, what the hell do you do repo? And you think it through, you go like, well, that's kind of crazy, but you have to do it. And so the important thing is your audience there. So whoever thinks that you having a dream of being a physician and potentially eventually a surgeon, whoever thinks that is arrogance, you're talking to the wrong audience, Alejandra, and you're wasting your time. You're literally barking up the wrong tree. People that are going to be receptive of your dreams is what you want to find. People are going to be able to nurture that dream of yours into existence. And as I mentioned earlier, never lose belief especially when people say no. Remember, no, it's a yes that is waiting to evolve. It's an indicator that you're in the right trajectory. As a matter of fact, I worry now when people don't tell me things like no, or that cannot be done, or that's impossible. Every time I heard the word impossible, well, all of this other stuff happened. And so just screw them, basically, and move on. Find another person that thinks that your dream is a beautiful one, and do it. Do it because it will be the portal to a future you, to a future life, to a life of service. The one advice that I would give you is to understand why you want to do what you want to do. What are the motivators behind it? Are you doing these for the right reasons? The right reasons in my book being, do you want to serve? Do you find pleasure in doing that? Do you find purpose in that kind of life? Because if you do, the dream and the perseverance of pursuing it will get you there. I promise you that.
Mil gracias.
Mil de nada.
I love it. So many great questions too coming up in the chat. So I'd love to have you answer as many as we can too. So another one I see here is from Christian, a fellow friend as well.
What's up, guys? Long time no see. I'm absolutely beaming listening to your guys' voices and seeing your face. Honestly, just giving so much positivity and optimism that I've honestly been in need of these last few weeks on trauma surgery, let me tell you. But, man, just always refreshing to hear the life advice that both you guys have, and just the the spirit of enthusiasm that you bring to everywhere you go. Just so inspiring to hear from you guys. But yeah, I guess the question that I had that I put in this question box was, any advice you have for a surgical intern? And a follow-up question of, what do you believe the goal is of intern year? It's a crazy year. We do a lot of floor work. We're learning how the hospital works. What do you believe the goal is of this hectic first year of residency?
Well, I would first like to say hello to Christian. See, Christian is a perfect example of the spirit of this conversation today. Young man with a dream, wanted to be a surgeon, and one day kind of materializing my OR. Standing there, so full of energy, so full of dreams. It was literally coming out of him. It was almost palpable. And he actually broke through, didn't he? He's in a terrific program, in one of the very best programs in the country. And a lot of people, I'm sure, told him that he was crazy to dream what he was dreaming. I know, as a matter of fact, a lot of people did. I don't want to tell you what I think about them people. So we have this conversation with him as he was actually bartending in a party in my own house. And it was like unbelievable, the job that he did on that. The energy and the enthusiasm for the question that Alejandra was asking earlier is Christian. As a matter of fact, Christian is the answer to your question. And that's what happens when you believe. So what do you do in internship? Well, I will have to put a shout out to my daughter here that just wrote a marvelous piece on exactly that. Highly recommend that everybody reads it, because I read it, and it's the piece on that type that I've ever seen. I'm not being just a dad here. It really is fantastic. And so it's about adapting and overcoming internship. The experience is going to be brutal. There is no two ways about that. The hours are tough. And you hear all these old dinosaurs now that start with in my days, thing. And the internship is still very, very much tough. And it's not for what I call civilians to understand. People outside our business, they just don't understand what it is, the brutality of the contact with an internship year. So my advice to you, Christian, as it was not too long ago in a conversation with my own daughter, is to embrace it, to embrace everything that comes with it, because what you don't realize when you're going through it is that this is the fastest growth spurt that you're going to have in your entire academic life. It doesn't come even close to anything else that you're going to do in the future. It's the most incredible transition when you go from a young pup with a short white coat that doesn't know where the bathroom is located to this person that everybody's looking at for answers about life and death all the time. And it comes at you fast and furious, doesn't it? It kind of crushes you. And so lean on your tribe, build your own tribe, find your people, share the load with other people. Don't be afraid to communicate what you're feeling with others. Everybody at the beginning in internship is faking it until you make it, kind of thing. But everybody's scared shitless, actually, there, because it is scary what you're doing. But they're feeling the same things. So lean on your buddies, lean on your people, find mentors, find people. They are there. I know they're there, but not all. Some people, for reasons that I still don't understand, and I give you a hint, those people never work for me anymore. Now I have the luxury of being able to determine who works here. And so they just are purposefully hurtful with you. And it's still something that Dean Hawker told Camila not too long ago. They can do whatever they want to you, but they cannot stop time. And the time is coming, and you're going to finish your internship, you're going to finish your residency, and then you're going to be you. And it's going to be a combination of all these experiences, these marvelous experiences that you're going through. You just embrace it. When you're tired, acknowledge it, and realize that tiredness is actually making you stronger, and embrace it. And when you're really tired, when you disconnect, find an outlet, find somebody to talk to, call somebody. You can call me anytime. And you can call your buddies from medical school, you call other interns, you call your friends, you call your family. Your family is always an oasis of peace, if you want to think about it that way. And you lean on them, they'll carry you through. They will.
I love that. That's very true. And that's what I'm trying to remember on these hard days. This is a tough day, but this is the day that I grew, similar to like the soreness that you feel after a gym, it tells you you worked really hard that day, and so I end my days exhausted. I'm like, you know what? I grew better I'm going to be a better resident tomorrow than I was today.
Yes,
this exhaustion.
I have no doubts that you will be, Christian. I know you.
That's the plan. But I'm just trying to press into it as well, and just use it as a time to learn how the hospital works. I'm trying to, this is the one time where I really get to immerse myself in every part of the hospital. So, but I'll try to keep that in mind moving forward, and have already reached out to Camila many times to share our experiences. And I know I can reach out to you anytime.
Definitely. Intern year keeps us humble, but it's also a really amazing time for all of you who are listening and also applying into residency. I can definitely agree that it's one of the most invigorating times of my life, and I'm meeting some amazing people and learning so much in a fellow surgical world of ophthalmology, different zip code. We have some other questions too. So let's see from here. I think we've got a couple. So some from Julia Chavez, and feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like. I can also ask the questions.
Hi, sorry. I had a couple questions. The first one was, I was just kind of curious to hear from you about your motivation for like flipping doing things contrary to the health study and model. And my other question was similar to one that was already asked. So.
Okay, so let's talk about Hasted. You see, I don't know if you know this, but this year marked the 100th year anniversary of his death. So when Halstead occurred, it was transformational in the world of surgery, and it needed to happen because it was a mess. It was an unregulated mess. But there's a couple of things that have happened over the last 100 years. We have actually started flying airplanes. We listen to transistor radios that evolve into a wireless devices. We have put men on the surface of the moon. We have autonomous rovers roving the surface of Mars. We are operating with AI-assisted robotic instrumentations that are well beyond the scope of the imagination of Dr. Halstead, I'm sure of that. And so to continue training people on principles that are 100 years old in a world that is changing so fast. Imagine if you try to train a pilot the way pilots were trained 100 years ago. Well, you couldn't fly a paper plane back then. And now you have people designing rockets. And so the training systems have to evolve. They have to change. It's a necessity that they change because the product that we're trying to develop, it is radically different than what Dr. Halstead, as brilliant as he was trying to develop at a time when anesthesia was just being invented. We invented anesthesia, we invented antibiotics, we invented minimally invasive surgery, we invented all these inflection points that have completely changed the world of surgery. And yet, here we are, still adhering to the same exact principles of training with exactly zero science behind it to justify any of the systems of training that we have. Why does it take 5 years? Why 80 hours or 100 hours? Or we're not going to go into how they came up with the 80 hours because I was in the room actually. And so, no, this has to change. It's a necessity. It's mandatory that we do so because the world around us has changed and it has changed dramatically and it will continue to change. By the time that you are me, I cannot even imagine what you're going to be doing. I didn't imagine that I was going to be operating with laparoscopic instruments or robotic instruments. As a matter of fact, I didn't thought that it was even science fiction possible back then. And here we are, beta testing the next layer of evolution of them. And so it takes 2.5 years to train an Apache attack helicopter from the time that they leave college to the time that they're driving sorties and missions and dropping missiles halfway across the planet. That is a 26-year-old young man or woman, 2.5 years. I don't know if you ever sat in the cockpit of one of these Cobra attack helicopters, but they are incredibly complex. And that's how long it takes for them. Why it takes 5 years for us to do this? Where is it written other than Halstedian methodology that it has to be? Why is it that it's considered heretical or inconceivable to ask these questions? And so when I was younger and I asked these questions, people called me, well, all kinds of things. I guess it's more difficult to call me that now because I have a certain other standing. But disruption is a beautiful thing. It's how we evolve, it's how we advance, it's how we change into something much, much better, much more purposeful. That is why we are on a full-on attack now on every Castilian concept, because the man has been dead for 100 years.
Love that. That's a great question too. I think we have room for one more too. Alejandra Castro had a great one in the chat.
Hi, thank you for speaking with us today. It was very nice to hear about your story. And I did have one question, and that is, what is one thing you wish you had known when you first started your journey? As you know, a medical graduate from Uruguay who eventually came to the States. Yes. That was my question, yeah.
That's a great question. I wish I had known what I know now, to be honest. But that is the wishful thinking, right? We engage in these exercises. And so back to the question, why we're attacking Castilian concepts and tying it up to your question. So I can wish all that I want that I had known what I know now, or I can build a system of training that allows me to insert what I know now into younger versions of me.
Yeah.
You see, changing the past is impossible, and trying to do so is an exercise in frustration and futility. And so I like to turn it actually exactly 180 degrees front forward. What I wish I knew then is what I try others to know now. It's what I am now. Because the question is, what would happen if I knew back then what I know now?
Yeah.
Well, let's just go find that together.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. And these types of webinars always help us because you are where we want to be, essentially. And so you have the ability to see retrospectively what your journey has been, and we can all learn from that. So thank you.
Thank you, actually. You guys are the future. You realize that, right?
Hopefully.
This room, this virtual room is literally, quite literally the future of us.
Yeah.
I mean, some of you are going to be hopefully operating on me one day.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Thank you for that question, Alejandra. That was really wonderful.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute blast. And I'm about to hand it off for the closing remarks, but I want to thank you all again for this opportunity. Dad, this has been a really fun conversation to engage with everyone that's listening in tonight. It's really been wonderful. And muchísimas gracias again to the Latino Surgical Society for this really wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, same here. I mean, this has been a blast, a huge honor and a huge privilege. I don't take it for granted. And putting Camila as the moderator, well, consider my mind blown, actually, because it really was unexpected and it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you.
And thank you both, both Dr. Daniela Albo and Dr. Camila Albo, for being so sincere and for this powerful conversation. I think that everybody here has enjoyed this so much. And I want to thank everybody for joining this month's Inside the Operating Room series. And you will be hearing in our social media about our next month's webinar as well. So thank you, everyone, and I hope everybody has a good night.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Y muchas gracias.